Thank you. We're gonna proceed. We have one of our task force members, Reverend Howard Jenkins, is going to make a presentation on behalf of the Menaces Alliance. So, Reverend Jenkins.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, Senator Harold Matson. Thank you, Commission. To the LEOBoR Commission and all who are listening, the Commission's goal is to recommend change and to acknowledge policies that can be enhanced, and just as important, to be honest in identifying where cultural change and citizen-police relations require reformation within law enforcement. For us on this commission board, our goal is to influence recommended change. We must also acknowledge that societally, we are in the midst of a critical time in dealing with the perception of law enforcement, particularly when it comes to race relations. My personal opinion, the optics are not favorable. I intentionally did some research that did not have a liberal spin, but would reflect the attitude regarding race policing in America. Going back to 2016, an article reflecting policing in America, it was identified that there was racial impartiality, whereas 64% white Americans are highly confident in their local police departments and believe all racial groups are treated equally, whereas 31% of Blacks and 42% of Hispanic Americans are far less likely to have confidence that all racial groups are treated equally. June 2020, that identified top 10 race and policing in the U.S., 3 of those top 3 identified that in 2019, a survey was taken where 84% of Black adults said that in dealing with police, Blacks are generally treated less fairly than whites. 63% of whites said the same. Similarly, 87% of Blacks and 61% of whites said the U.S. criminal justice system treats Blacks less fairly. The second top 10 was Black adults are about 5 times as likely as whites to say they have been unfairly stopped by police because of their race or ethnicity. 59% Black men said they were unfairly stopped versus 31% Black women. And the third and final of the top 10 said that nearly 2/3 of Black adults, 65%, say that they have been in situations where people act as they were suspicious of them because of their race or ethnicity, while only a quarter of white adults say that it happened to them. Roughly 1/3 of both Asian and Hispanic adults, 31% and 37% respectively, say they have been in such situations. Why do I bring forth these findings? Because these statistics must also acknowledge that the racial and ethnic makeup in U.S. prisons continue to look substantially different from the demographics of the country as a whole. Whites account for 64% of adults, but 30% of prisoners. And while Hispanics represent 16% of adult population, they account for 23% of inmates. And Blacks represent 12% of the U.S. adult population, but 33% of the sentenced but take up 33% of the prison population. Whether we care to admit these inequities of the prison sentencing of minorities, as well as the systemic inequalities of law enforcement, we have heard and the data reveals, and we are faced with the facts and the perceptions. How policing is seen demographically from a citizen's perspective and in the eyes of Black America. What has brought us to where we are today is not only because the time has come to review LEOBoR, but is in the midst of George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter movement. America and the world has come to a point in saying enough is enough regarding how police officers treat and or react to Black people and the injustice when race is a factor. All police officers are not bad. It is a few that are scattered within the police department that gives policing a bad reputation. We are not faced with difficult times in police relations. We are faced with generations of repeated history of abuse of authority. All police officers are not bad. It is a few that are scattered within the police department that gives policing a bad reputation. We are not faced with difficult times in police relations. What we are faced with is a culture that is deep-rooted in recognizing its wrongs, but has allowed it to exist, and real change is difficult to make. All police officers are not bad. It's a few that are scattered within the police department that gives policing a bad reputation. We're not faced with difficult times in police relations. We are faced with the cell phone that captures real-time confrontations that make abuse undeniable and the reality to attempt to justify it. What I have identified may be considered by some as a negative introduction of policing. However, the LEOBoR Commission is here to make change. Or are the optics correct about what is being said about us as a commission? This task force is being looked at to accomplish at best a soft reform of LEOBoR and not a comprehensive overhaul. In the current state under LEOBoR, officers are judged only by other officers, and LEOBoR prevents the formation of civilian review boards that give civilians oversight, and we've heard that today. But if we're looking for real change, true overhaul, change starts by including equal community voices. The recommendation for us, as I've heard today, is to have LEOBoR comprised of not just police peers and lawyers, but community. Having an impactful and true overhaul with equal representation from the community also provides insight and understanding that all police officers are not bad, but just a few that give policing a bad reputation. I've said on several occasions as a member of this commission, I recognize that policing is a difficult job, and police are faced with dealing with tough situations, and in some instances must take split-second decisions. However, what we are faced with across this country is what is being labeled as justifiable police brutality. Now, before it is said that Rhode Island does not have the same issues as other states, the reality is the optics of this LEOBoR and similar commissions across this entire country is under a microscope when looking at police reaction to citizens' offenses. I did not say police fatalities. The term I've used for intentionality is police reactions to citizens' offense. Why? Because we are dealing with behavioral issues. The question I have raised previously is what is considered bad and or accepted behavior during our meetings. It is not about shaming police. As a community leader, my appeal is not only to call out the wrong in the community, but call out the wrong within the culture of the police force. Just like there are bad people, there are also a population of bad police officers. Just like there are mistakes made by people, there is also a population of mistakes made by police officers. Just like there is poor judgment by people, there is also a population of poor judgment by police officers. There cannot be police offenses categorized that are identified in the news as instances of force over 8,000 and deemed justifiable over 8,000. Whether you agree or disagree, 99.9% of instances of force cannot be deemed justifiable. If that was the case, we would not have these protests that are going on nationwide within our country. Which brings us to our role as the LEOBoR Commission. We must be committed to change that will help reshape our communities and law enforcement relationship. The need for change does not start during a hearing for a police officer. At that point, the behavior has gone too far, and the reality historically has been it is the police officer's word over the citizen, meaning the police involved has the opportunity to admit or include details that favor their side of the story. The other sides of the story doesn't come out until later in the legal proceedings, which may never be part of the department review process. Is it or should it be acknowledged that those that also speak up about inequities are ostracized, or should I say blackballed, because there's no safe platform to speak openly about systemic injustice that exists? Should there be an independent agency where goals to make change, not in policy, but in police behavior? Is it worth consideration that police officers are rotated throughout departments with the intention to help better shape behavior and hopefully reduce stress by not having to deal with bad things and bad people on a continual basis? It is worth our consideration as a board to look at these particular issues. I am in total agreement with Attorney Ragasta that we should consider having civilians on the LEOBoR board as this commission. I thank you for your opportunity, and I thank you for hearing me out.
Yes, thank you, Reverend. Any questions for Reverend Jenkins?